Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the ngBucharest meetup. We are super excited to have with us Isaac Mann from Nrwl. Hello, Isaac.
Hello.
Isaac's gonna talk to us today about NX, one of the main products of Nrwl. But before his presentation, I'll just want to introduce the community for those of you that don't know who we are, and just have some community news, and then we'll go to your presentation. So let me just share my screen. There we go. Awesome. So welcome to the meetup. So first of all, I want to thank Adormi, which are hosting our event for tonight, and providing us with some beer afterwards. And they're super awesome, and their space is so perfect for these events. And I want to thank them again for hosting us. We're ngBucharest, so the Angular Bucharest community. These are our social links if you wanna join and see what's happening in our community. Our guest today, as I said, Isaac Mann. He's a senior software engineer at Nrwl. You might also know him from Egghead. He has a really awesome course on Angular. He's the author of numerous libraries in the internet and OSS contributor. And yeah, I'll let him tell you more about him, but I just want to say that he's super awesome, and thanks again for joining us. Really quickly about the upcoming events, so conferences here in our community, and the conferences that we are partnering with. Most importantly, the Vox Days Frontend conference. We have a 20% discount coupon for our community members. They've already posted some really interesting names in the lineup. There's going to be Simona Cotin, which is like the most awesome speaker ever. There's also Manfred Starr and Liran. There's a lot of awesome speakers, so if you haven't got your tickets yet, you should definitely go grab them. Then in less than a month, I think, one of the biggest conferences, JavaScript conferences in Romania, Just Heroes. If you haven't got your ticket yet, I think there's still a couple of them left. We have a discount for that as well. ngVikings, which is one of my favorite Angular conference. Of course, we partnered with them as well, and we have a discount coupon. It's late May in Copenhagen. It's the perfect time to visit Copenhagen. I totally encourage seeing this conference. Later in the summer, NGDE in Berlin, also highly recommend event, community-driven, super awesome people organizing it. And later in the autumn, NG Rome, 7th of October. I heard they sold out their super early bird tickets. So yeah, if you want to go, I think you should definitely hurry to grab your tickets. And also, I want to announce our next meetup. We're at the current meetup, and I'm already announcing the next meetup. April 4th, we're going to meet with Amir from Cyprus to talk about modern end-to-end testing. So it's going to be another super awesome edition. Amir is also going to join us live through Hangouts. So yeah, that's it from me for the introduction. Isaac, you have the floor. Let me stop sharing. Stop. There we go.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited that you have Cypress coming up next, because NX works really well with Cypress, and Cypress is one of the tools that I've really enjoyed working with and started working with in the last year or so. Let me share my screen and get started. Yeah, basically, my whole presentation is going to be along the same theme of making computers do what they're good at, so that people can do what they're good at. So letting the automated, tedious tasks be. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, it's perfect.
Okay. Great. So yeah, letting the automated tedious tasks be done by computer, and so people can make real decisions about what actually matters to people rather than doing boring things. So yeah, as you said, my name's Isaac Mann. I'm going to be talking about how you can use NX to help you build large Angular apps successfully. Just a quick aside, most of the slide deck I stole from my coworker Jason Jean, who's done a talk similar to this at a few meetups as well. So thank you to Jason for getting this going. So I work at Nrwl, and Nrwl does Angular consulting and basically all sorts of things revolving around the Angular community. A quick thing about me, there's me. As Andre mentioned, I'm an instructor for Agate.io. I've written some articles for Angular in depth, and right now with Nrwl, I also work on the Nrwl Connect platform that Nrwl provides, and I'll explain more about what that is in a little bit. So one of the things that Nrwl provides is workshops where people can learn about how to use Angular and how to use NX specifically, and our other open source offerings. So basically, when we join your team, this is our services offering. What we do is we have our team, which is a small, tight-knit group of developers, and we work basically inside of your team to help you build your app and help you set up the best practices and make sure that you're successful at whatever Angular app you're working on. That's the services piece of Nrwl. Now Nrwl also provides some products, specifically NX, Angular Console, and Nrwl Connect. And NX is basically a superset of the Angular CLI. It starts with the Angular CLI and builds on it. So if you're happy with the direction that the Angular CLI is going in terms of removing the need for you to know how the build system works and giving you additional easy ways to generate parts of your code that you don't want to have to remember all the different ways of wiring it up, NX just takes that another step and uses the Angular CLI to do that, just to give you more of what you like about the Angular CLI. NX.dev is the website where you can go to learn more about NX itself. It's just recently, in the last couple of weeks, got a new, well, just recently got registered, and it's got a new look and feel and new documentation. So I recommend checking that out and just to see what it's all about. Now, the Angular console is another open source product that we have. You can download it as a plugin for VS Code, and directly within VS Code, you can, if you see over on the left-hand side, there's a little icon there. You can click on that icon, and it'll show you how to run NX schematics as well as Angular CLI schematics and run npm tasks. And it's basically a GUI wrapped around all the command line tools that you would have used from the command line. You can have a point-and-click GUI to see what you're doing, and also to help you remember all the flags that you wouldn't necessarily remember from the command line. So that's not what this talk is about, but it works really well with NX. And you can also download it as a standalone desktop application. All right, Nrwl Connect. This is the piece that I work on most of the time at Nrwl. This is a way for companies to gain access to the knowledge of the Nrwl employees. Basically have a helpline they can call and say, hey, I'm stuck on this bug. Can you give me some insights on this? Or what do you suggest about how to implement this certain kind of feature? So it's just a way to speed up your development process without having which is separate from our services product, services piece, which would have somebody full-time dedicated to a project. This would be just an as-you-needed kind of thing. It also gives you access to different resources like videos and and books and articles, and basically our opinion on how you should build Angular apps. This is the website where you can go and learn more about Nrwl Connect. Here we go. So that's just a general overview of what Nrwl is and who we are. So now let's dive into the meat of the presentation, which is NX itself. So NX, as I said, is built on top of the Angular CLI. That logo on the bottom is the Angular CLI logo. I had to look that up. I wasn't sure exactly what that was. And NX gives you the ability to use modern tools and build full stack apps and develop like Google. And I'm going to explain a little bit about what each of those three things mean in detail. So here are four modern tools that are wired up automatically for you if you use NX in an NX workspace. The first here is Prettier. Prettier is basically removes all the tedious arguments that you can have with coworkers about how you should format your code. So on a pull request, somebody says, hey, you should use spaces and not tabs, and that just makes you angry. So then there's no actual benefit to that in terms of whether the code works or not. So what Prettier does is you can type in whatever you want, and here's an example of a horribly formatted file, which nobody could read very well. And as soon as you press save, or as soon as you trigger Prettier in whatever fashion you trigger it, Prettier will turn it into this, which is the same exact code semantically and even syntactically, but you can read it a lot better. Humans can understand this, and it took zero effort on the part of the programmer to go in and add all the white space and the new lines. So that's just a no-brainer. That just helps you not think about things that humans shouldn't have to think about. The second thing is Jest. Jest is a really nice unit testing framework. It's fast, and so this is generally compared to Karma. It's fast. It gives you some automatic parallelization of your code. You don't have to boot up Chrome, so it's got a virtual DOM, or no, a virtual DOM that it runs all the tests against. So you don't have to have an actual browser to test your unit tests. It gives you nice exceptions when your tests fail. Also has snapshot testing, so this example shows an image. It doesn't really do actual images snapshot testing, but it does code snapshot testing. So you just write a single line saying expect the output to match what the test ran the last time. And if it doesn't match what ran the last time, then it'll say, hey, these are different. Was that really a bug, or should we just update the snapshot? So it basically relieves you from the need to maintain all of your mock data, all of your mock testing data. And you can just say, yes, that is actually what it should be, and let the test pass. Update the snapshot and let it pass. Or you can say, okay, no, actually that is different and I should fix that. But without having to maintain that mock data. Now, Cypress is another thing that gets set up, can be set up for you automatically with NX. And Cypress is amazing, but you'll hear more about that at your next meetup. But Cypress is one of the tools that came out that made me actually enjoy testing my code. It's got a nice interface for running your end-to-end tests. You can see your tests there, and you can see your app on the right-hand side. As you in this GUI here, when you hover over one of the steps on the left-hand side, it will actually show you the state of your app as you click on one of those and say, hey, wait, okay, it broke at this step. Why is that? And you can see on the right-hand side, oh, that the button was disabled, or that there was no button, or whatever the problem was. So as it goes through, this is the time travel feature of it. As you can see what happens at each step and why something failed. You also have ability to create backend apps right next to your front-end apps with Nest or with a node, a plain node backend. Nest is nice because it's built with TypeScript. and it uses dependency injection just like Angular does, and it's agnostic to whatever kind of database you want to use. So Nest is a nice complement to people who are already familiar with Angular. Nest is a nice choice for your backend. So you can put them a Nest backend side by side with your front end Angular code, and you can share some of your TypeScript models and some other common TypeScript code if you want to do that. Yeah. So the next thing that NX lets you do is develop like Google, and it also got the other logos of other big companies here. So what do we mean by develop like Google? Well, I'm not sure if you knew this, but Google has one repository for all of their code for all of their products across their whole company, and so they have one giant monorepo, and that's how they develop things. And so let's talk about why you might want to do that. So let's say you have multiple repos. Say you have, so along the top side here, you have 3 apps with the Angular icon. These are 3 apps. And the bottom icons here are libraries. And let's say they're all separate repositories. Now, each repository needs to have a set of tools that go along with it. It has TypeScript and continuous integration and version control and other things that it uses to manage itself. Now, but the problem is with multiple repos, each repo has to manage its own tools and dependencies. So you've got copies of all these things across all of your repos, and potentially the versions of those things could get out of sync, and you could have weird, hard to find bugs with, say you've got a TypeScript version mismatch between your library and your application, and you're not sure. Sometimes there's a bug, sometimes there isn't, and you're not sure why, because it's not actually in your code, it's in the version mismatch of your dependencies. Whereas if you had a monorepo, you'd have one set of tools, one version of TypeScript, one version of Angular, one version of Jenkins or whatever other tools you use. You could just completely eliminate that whole class of bugs that you could run into. And those bugs are particularly difficult to identify because it's not actually your code. Okay, so here's another reason. So say you have multiple repos and you have dependencies between them. This one app consumes this library and this library consumes this other library. If you're going to do that, they're depending on each other based on versions. So this app is dependent on this app, a particular version of it, which is dependent on a particular version of this other app, this other library, and you have to manage those version numbers, and sometimes they can get out of sync. Whereas if you have a monorepo, they all just depend on the current master version of all the libraries. So when somebody makes a change to a particular library or a particular app, it gets tested against whatever the current version of all the other libraries and apps are. So you don't have version mismatching as a problem. The other thing is, say you want to upgrade Angular from whatever you are to Angular version 8. If you upgrade to Angular v8, you're upgrading it once, and it's applying to everything in your whole monorepo. So your libraries are updated, your apps are all updated all at the same time. So okay, so what are the potential problems with a monorepo? Let's say you make an update to one small piece. You don't want to have to deploy all of your apps when you make a small update somewhere that doesn't affect everything else. So let's talk about how NX helps you solve this problem. So this hammer icon will indicate that something's been edited, and that ship icon is indicating which things get deployed. So I have a question for you. I want you to answer in your head. say we edited this library here on the left, and this is the dependency graph here. Which of these apps should be deployed? Should it A, B, or C along the top? So we want to deploy A and B because the lib that they depended on was modified. But we don't want to deploy C because C is unaffected by the change that we just made. And so NX gives you tools to let you do just that. Okay, similar question, what about testing things? Anytime you make a change, you want to test that change didn't break something. But we don't want to run unnecessary tests for things that couldn't possibly have been broken by this change. So say we modified library E here. What libraries or apps should be tested if we modified library E? Give you a second to give your answer in your head. All right, so we want to test app C and library E. Nothing else should be affected by a change to library E, but we definitely want to run those tests on library E and app C. Okay, and NX will let you do that just with a simple command. Another thing NX lets you do is gives you some added generate commands. If you're familiar with the Angular CLI, it already gives you some, but NX adds a few more on top of that just to help you save on some of the boilerplate that you might do, and to give you some nudges in the direction that we think will help you build better and more stable apps. So the tool that I was talking about in NX is the affected command. That lets you lets you build only things that are affected by the current change, lets you lint things that are affected by the current change, test things, end-to-end test things, and that way you don't need to worry about, did I miss something? Should I have run a tests on other things based on this change? You can know that everything that was affected by this change was tested. Assuming your test coverage is what it should be, then it should catch everything. Okay, another thing that NX lets you do is lets you constrain your dependencies. NX knows which apps and libs are dependent on each other, and allows you to provide tags for your libs or for your apps. And so you can say this is a UI only lib, or this is a state only lib, or this is just a plain TypeScript utility library, and it lets you write rules about how they should depend on each other. And we can say, hey, this library, so that this top arrow shows that a library should never depend on an app. It just doesn't make sense, because apps by definition are things that can be deployed and shipped to somebody, but a library can't be. And so a library depending on an app doesn't make sense. So if you try to do that, you'll get a tslint error in your code, and it won't compile. Another thing you could set up. So these other rules are kind of our opt-in rules. You can set them up yourself, and you can add your own tags based on this. So one rule you might want to have is that a state library that's responsible for accessing data from a database or something should not depend on a presentational UI library. Because the dependency should go in the reverse, or whatever way you want to do it. So you can set up these complex rules on which types of libraries should depend on which other libraries, and then that stops people from accidentally making bad architecture decisions. Now, say you don't actually know how your code is dependent on each other. You can run a tool called npm run depth graph, and that will generate a picture just like this that shows exactly how your code is set up, how it's structured, and how the libraries and apps are connected to each other. So this is great because it shows you actually how your architecture is set up, and not how you wish your architecture was set up. Most other tools that aren't actually generated from your code are out of date. They're wrong when they're first written, and then they're out of date the next day when somebody makes another commit, because somebody accidentally makes a dependency, and then you've got a new structure. But this is generated at the moment you run the command, and will show you what your code actually, how your code is actually structured, not how you wish it was. You can also create your own schematics and run those. If you've got your own particular ways of developing your own style for setting up components, you can save that pattern and have everybody who works on your app use that pattern when they create their own components. Okay. Would you like to see a live demo? Let me see if I can switch.
That's an affirmative, Marcel.
Yes, I assume so. Let's see if I can. Bear with me here. Okay. Share. Okay, so let me boost up the font size here.
Isaac, can you go with the light theme?
Sure. Yes, I can do that. If I can remember how to do that.
I think Command Shift P and theme.
Oh yeah, okay. Color theme. That better?
Perfect.
Okay. So let's see. So this is, so I'm going to go through on nx.dev, there's a tutorial. And basically I'm just going to go through that tutorial that you could go through yourself, and we'll see how far I get. We can, Andrea, you're going to have to stop me if I run over time. But I've already done the first step, which is to run npx create nx workspace, and I named it ngBucharest, and now I'm actually inside of the project that was generated.
Isaac, just a second. Can you really briefly explain what npx is for those?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So npx lets you download. Okay, let me back up. npx is a tool that comes bundled with npm, and it's a helper for letting you run command line scripts that are hosted as packages on npm. So what npx does is first it looks in your node modules and sees if you have the, let's see, can I select here? Nope. It sees if you have this package installed, and it'll run it from node modules. If you don't have it installed in your local node modules, it will download it from npm in a temporary directory, and then run that script that it's downloaded from npm. And then once it's finished, it'll throw away that temporary directory. So it's a tool that's really useful for running CLI tools that you always want the latest version of, or running something that you don't actually want to keep stored on your system. You don't want to use up megabyte space for. Let's see, I think here's one thing. There we go. So there's a package that I don't want to take up any space on my computer, but it's just kind of funny to use. But the there's the create nx workspace tool is just a shortcut to download NX and get it all generated for you in a new folder, and then to name it ngBucharest. Does that explain it well, Nrwl?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Okay. As you can see, it's been boilerplated out here. You got your package JSON and apps and libs. So this is something different from the Angular CLI project. You have apps which are deployable pieces of code, something that anything that a user could actually log into or see on a screen would become an app. And then things that the apps use, or anything that is not directly deployable becomes a lib. So there are lots of different kinds of libs, and basically, and then apps are just the things that either front end apps or back end apps can go in here. And apps are generally pretty small in terms of their code size, and they pool in libraries to do all of their functionality. Okay, so we did that, and now I'm going to do ngg app to-dos. So now, because this is an NX workspace, okay, let me, ngg is short for ngGenerate, and app here is short for application, but I can just do ngg app, and I'm going to call it to-dos. So this will make an app called to-dos. I'm going to create an Angular framework, and we're going to just use the default directory and use CSS, and we'll use Jest for unit testing. You can also do Karma if you want to, but Jest is fine. You can use Cypress or Protractor for end-to-end testing. We'll leave it on Cypress. And you can add tags here for those dependency graph TSLint rules if you want to. So this is installing, and it's created inside of apps. It's created in a to-dos app, to-dos folder, and a to-dos ETE folder. And let's see, to-dos ETE, you see it has a cypress.json file because it's using Cypress. And we got some pictures and integration. All of these folders will be explained in how to set up Cypress. That can be explained to you next time. Here we have a jest.config.js. You'd have a karma.conf.js if you'd used Karma instead. Okay, so that's finished. And let me do, and then I'm going to do ng serve to-dos. And when that's finished, I'll have to change what I'm sharing. Oh, hold on. I need to stop what I'm. Try it again. Okay. So this is probably going to be a little underwhelming here, but just so you can see, this is what it gives you out of the box. Welcome to to-dos. You got your NX logo, Angular app built with NX, and some links here. Okay, so let's switch back. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. There it is. Okay, I'm actually going to skip the end-to-end testing step. I can show it to you at the end, just to show you some. All right, so now I'm going to display app stuff to do. Actually, I'm going to add some to do. Let's see if I can create this. Okay, so in the app component, I'm going to add some code that we got from the tutorial here. Actually, this should be ngBucharest. Nope, doesn't like that. Okay, it's going to want me to do this. Nope. Should have prefix ngBucharest. Okay, so it doesn't like the camel case there. Oh, we can fix that. Change that prefix to. I'm going to change this. Just change this to my.org because that's what all the change it to my.org because that's all the what the sample code is using. And save that, and in here, I think that's right. Okay, let me see if this works. Should be very soon. Let's restart. That. There it is. And now I'm diving into all the configuration pieces here that you normally wouldn't have to if you're using NX, but I'm just setting this up so that there we go. So now the TS-lint rule there is satisfied. Okay, so we got that. Let me copy this. Actually, sorry, I had to copy something different. Okay, so now there should be some to-dos showing up in the list. And if I change the window that I'm sharing, refresh here. So here we got our to-dos and adding a to-do. Now, that's a pretty simple app and not very exciting. So let's add a backend to this. So let's say I'm going to add the HTTP client here to the app module. Oh yeah, let me change my screen. Yep, you're right. Change my screen back to VS Code. There we go. Okay, so I just pasted in and basically added the HTTP client module to the app module. And I'm going to add in to add some code to the app component here. So if this is ever, if you feel like I'm going too fast, you can go back and look at all these steps from the nx.dev site and follow along with what I'm doing here. Okay, so I added these, and now if I go back to my, so I'm going to be doing a post here, or actually a get to get my to-dos from the network, but that's not going to work because we have nothing serving up the to-dos. So what we need to do is we need to generate a backend app to actually serve that up for us. So I'm going to run through doing that. All right, so let me, I'll just actually close that and we'll just stop this. So ngg, so ng generate. So this is one of the schematics you can use. Generate node app. We're going to call it API. And then dash dash front end project equals to-dos. So this would be kind of hard to figure out exactly what to put in for these flags here. So if you are, if you're trying to figure out what to do and you don't have the commands memorized, which I don't, I just pasted this in from the tutorial. I like to use the Angular console here. So I've got the Angular console VS Code extension installed. And so you can do, it has several different options here. You go to generate, and let me hide that the other way. Generate, and I want to generate we're under Nrwl schematics, generate a node application. And let's see, I want to call it API. The directory is fine. So as I'm typing this in, it's showing me what the command is that it would run and the resulting files that it would update. But it hasn't run yet because I haven't clicked generate. So these are the important fields. Here are the optional fields. Framework Nest.js, that's right. I want to scroll down. Unit test runner is just, oh, front end project. I want this to be to-dos. So this is the exact same thing as having typed in ng generate this whole line from the command line, but I personally prefer the GUI here from the Angular console. But you can use whichever one you feel more comfortable with. So I click generate here, and it'll run. And so now you see under apps, we have another folder here called API, which is it's a Nest app, which is a backend node app. And we're going to update some of the code in there. So close that generate thing. So that's that. So I'm going to update this with some code that I'm pasting in from the tutorial, and update the app service. This is just serving up some blank sample to-dos and updating this controller. Okay, so now let's try this. So now to serve the backend app, I can do ng serve API. And now that's running on localhost 3333. That's configurable inside your one of your config files. I think it's the Angular JSON, but we'll double check that. And the dash dash front end project flag that we used on the when we generated it, that generated a proxy for us. So when we do ng serve to-dos, this is now configured to, I can actually show you where the proxy is. Angular JSON, scroll down here, to-dos. Here, this line here. It created added a proxy config to apps to-dos. And let me see if I can find it. There it is. And basically said, if you're trying to hit /API, look for it on port 3333. And so now if I switch back to here, I'll stop my screen share. Here, share that. Refresh here. Okay, it's actually, as you can, in the network tab here, I can make this bigger. You see there's actual network calls being made, and it's getting my to-dos from the backend app that I just created. Let's see. Okay, are there questions? Should I slow down? Should I go faster?
I think we can gather the questions and ask them at the end. So
okay, all right.
Yeah, pace is good, I think.
Okay, all right. So there are 2 or 3 more things I want to show in my demo. Let's stop sharing that. We'll go back to VS Code again. Okay, so in the app.controller, nope, app.service here. Okay, so in the backend code, we have an interface for to-dos that says it has a title and it's a string, but we have that same exact interface on the front-end code right here. And so that's code duplication. Obviously, this is a trivial example, but in a larger app, this would be a bigger deal. So it would be really nice to share that interface across your client and your client side and your backend applications. So let's create a library to do that. So I'll stop this. So I'm going to ngglib data. So lib is short for library, and the data is the name here. I'll just take the default directory, and it'll be, we can make an Angular library, a React library, or a TypeScript library. We're going to do a TypeScript one. CSS is fine. We won't give it any tags for now. And now, so inside of libs, we now have a data lib. So I'm going to take this interface here, and I'm going to paste it inside of my index.ts file. So this is a exceptionally small library right now, but it's just here for demonstration purposes. So I'm just putting that interface into this data lib, and so I'm going to update our backend to, instead of declaring that to-do interface, it's importing it from @myorg/data. And basically what that does is, so anytime you generate a library, NX adds an alias inside of your TS config, so you can reference that library directly from, as if in a syntax that's like referencing something in your node modules. So if potentially at some point in the future your library gets actually published on npm and it gets migrated out of your monorepo and you want to reference it from npm, that would be the way you would import it. But this is just importing it from your local monorepo. And the other nice thing about that is there's a TS-lint rule that stops you from importing from something inside here. And what that does is that lets you, as a library author, it lets you, let's see, what is this error? Okay, well, that's a different error, but it lets you stop stop people from trying to depend on things that you don't want them to depend on. You can write your explicit API. You can expose it in the index.ts file that's at the root of your library, and anything inside of your library doesn't have to be exposed, and anybody who tries to depend on it their code won't compile. So that they'll only depend on your actual API that you're actually providing to them. Okay, so that's there, and I need to update the client-side code too, because to-dos I pulled the interface out. I need to add the import back in. So here it is being imported from the same place. Okay, so that's been added. I want to do one other thing. I want to create a UI library. So right now our to-dos are listed out like this, and it's all the UI code is directly in the app itself. But generally, you want to have a shared set of UI components that are used in multiple places. So we're going to make a UI library, and that's going to be set up basically the same way as we created the data library. ngglib, we'll call it UI. We'll use the default directory, and this one is going to be an Angular library, not a TypeScript library, because it's going to be Angular UI components. CSS is fine, tags are fine, Jets is fine. And let's see, so now we have this. We have the data lib and the UI lib here. Okay. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to actually add a component to this UI library. So we're going to make a to-dos component here. So ng generate component. We're going to call it to-dos. Put it in the project UI. So the library name here is UI. And -- export means I'm going to export it in the module, the UI - module that we created it in. Okay, so we generated that, and now let's put some actual. So we generated it. So here's to-dos. It's got a to-dos component, to-dos component.ts, and we will update this. So this should be pretty familiar to you if you use the Angular CLI. And we're gonna copy this. This is just the same exact HTML that used to be that's here in the app component. That HTML, we're just moving it over to its own to-dos component here. And now we're gonna update the app module to import the, is that right? Nope, sorry, this is the wrong app module. We want to update the app module in the front end code to import this UI module that we just created. And then last thing we want to do is update our app component code to use the newly generated myorg to-dos UI component that we just made. Now this error here is because our TypeScript process hasn't run again. Let's see. Occasionally, when you generate things, you have to restart the TypeScript server. Well, it'll compile just fine. Okay, so now let's see if this works. I'm going to do ngserve API to start our backend, and then at the same time, I'm going to do ngserve to-dos to start our front end. And I'm going to switch the app I'm sharing here to show you the results of this.
Isaac, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you can, through NX, link an API with an app? I mean, I know you probably can do that through an npm script. I was just curious if there's a way that you can do that through NX.
To use it as a direct dependency. The only way I could think of to do that is to create your own custom tag, and so then you could have rules based on those tags. Yeah, I can't think of a way to do that directly. I can ask and get back to you.
Yeah, I think an npm script can work just as fine.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the app. It's been generated again, serving. So it doesn't look any different, which is actually a success because we just refactored a bunch of stuff out. We have sharing interfaces across the back end and the front end. We have a UI component library that's being used by the front end, and that's great that we haven't broken our app. So success there. Now I'm going to show you, I think this is my favorite part in terms of something I can visually show you. I'm going to stop sharing there. Now, if you want to see what your dependency graph actually looks like, now I have to find the app again. I think that's it. There we go. Yeah, so let's say you want to see what your dependency graph actually looks like. Let's make a new one here. You can run npm run depth graph. And let me show you what just popped up on my screen. So this is the dependency graph that was generated from the code we just did. You see the to-dos E2E app, which runs end-to-end tests, the to-dos app itself, which is the front-end app, the UI component library, the data library that is being used by the UI component library and by the to-dos app. Although actually, I'm not sure why. Maybe this dependency shouldn't be there. So you can look at this graph and you can say, wait, do I want this dependency to be there? And you can go and figure out, okay, why is that there? Which file is actually making that dependency? And then you can see that the dependencies that are actually supposed to be there. So that's a really handy tool, especially for larger applications that kind of get out of hand and you don't know which things are depending on which other things. Okay, now I'm going to show you the npm the affected command here, and we're very close. This is the affected command is the last thing I'm going to show you, and then we can take some questions. So I'm going to add everything I've done to one giant commit here. All the things, which is a terrible commit message, but that's fine. So now we've got a commit that's been saved, and I want to go and I'm going to change something in my to-dos component here. I'm just going to update this, put some exclamation marks at the end of my to-do text here. And I want to know if I've broken something. So I can run, let's see, npm run affected apps. Let's see, copy this in, paste this in. So npm run affected : apps will list all the apps that I've changed, and it does a comparison. So it's looking in your Git history, and it compares. You have to tell it what base you want it to compare with. So by default, it looks at what your current code is, and it compares it with some base. And the base, you have to tell it which one it is. So right now I'm saying the base is the master branch. And so I run that, and I said, okay, the to-dos app has been affected by your changes. If you update this, instead of apps, you say libs, which show you, okay, the UI lib has been affected by this change. And obviously, if you have an application or a code base that has like 50 different libs and 12 different apps, then these lists are going to be much more useful. But not only can it give you the list, you can run tests on the things that are affected. So you do something like this, npm run affected test, and so let's run tests on all the things that are affected by my latest change. And so it lists off, we've got UI and to-dos are both have both been affected. So it's running all the tests for UI, and then it also ran tests for the app, for the to-dos app, and some of our tests failed. So we have something to go back and fix. And then you can do the same thing with building. Let me paste this in. So you can do npm run affected and have this -- target build. It says what you should do with the things that are affected, and that'll just build your app that is affected by your current change. So there it is. Let me go back to the presentation for one last slide. What screen am I on? There it is. So that was the live demo. If you want to learn more about us, you can find Nrwl at nrwl.io. You can follow Nrwl on Twitter. I've got my Twitter account up there. There's also nx.dev listed here. We are hiring, so if you're interested, you can check out nrwl.io/careers. So thank you very much, and let's take some questions.
Thanks, Isaac. So, any questions? I'll pass them through you if you can't hear. Yeah.
PWA support in NX. Sorry, progressive apps.
PWAs in NX.
Yes. Yeah, you can do a PWA. It's just the same way as the Angular CLI because it's built on the Angular CLI. So everything you learn from the Angular CLI still applies.
I've seen we can do apps in, for example, React or something else. My question is, how opinionated is NX? For instance, can I use Babel and FlowType, or am I stuck with TypeScript?
So as far as React goes, React is we're kind of pushing it out there as it's our first attempt at it. I'm not sure if so NX itself will help you get set up with the configuration. So there's not a preset for Babel and FlowType. But if you configure that yourself, there's no reason you couldn't use the other abilities that NX has once you have that configuration set up. But that would be a neat addition. If you want to submit a PR, I'm sure we'd love to have that as a preset.
And as a follow-up question to that, seeing that you're experimenting with React apps and you have all these different options for backend APIs, right? Because I think you can do Express as well, right? Besides that, what's the 5-year goal for NX? Are you planning on going at some point, framework agnostic and just offer a monorepo solution for whatever project people want to build in and just focus on tooling, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll defer the 5-year plan to either Jeff or Victor, but
Okay.
yeah. So I'm not sure, but basically there's nothing necessarily Angular specific about NX, and so that's why we started experimenting with React, because it's the Angular CLI and NX are about organizing your code in a monorepo. Well, NX is about a monorepo, and the Angular CLI is about abstracting away your build process. And that there's nothing specific to Angular really about that. And even the code generation stuff is not necessarily Angular specific. You can put whatever code you want in those Angular schematics. So it's just a neat experiment to put whatever framework you're using into that setup.
Yep, one more question.
Follow-up question on my previous one, just a small one. You mentioned, doing a PR or maybe contributing in any way. Is there any way right now that we can customize the builds? So as you mentioned, maybe if we can bring in Babel and do our own thing, that will work. Is there any way we can do that? Like get access to, for example, the Webpack config to add a loader?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of what we do for clients, is help configure the build process. But you can absolutely do that yourself. So what you want to do is you want to research the builders in the Angular CLI. Let me show you. This is going down a rabbit trail, but I can do it anyway. Here we go. So in your Angular JSON file, each task, serve or build or whatever has a builder associated with it. And this is basically this first part before the colon looks up a node module, a package in node modules, and then it finds the builder associated with that in that node module. And you can write your own builder. This is just basically node code running. You can run Webpack or run whatever you want. Now, if you want to still use the Angular CLI without ejecting the Webpack, there's a library called ngx build plus by Manfred Steyer that lets you write a Webpack config that's just the difference, that what you want to add on basically to the existing Angular CLI, and you can merge that in. And it's really really useful to just specify what is different and not completely remove yourself from the ecosystem. But so the answer is yes. It'll take some research and work on your part, but yeah.
Cool, thanks. Any other final questions? Yeah.
I can have at least two if you have time. Kind of curious about libs. So if you have a library that you actually do want to publish on NPM, for example, you need to take it out, right? You can't publish a lib in NX, at least not now. Or can you do that?
No, you can absolutely do that. One of the properties, I should share again. One of the properties in the generate schematic for libraries. Hide this. Generate a library. Here we go. No, a schematic library is publishable. So you just set that publishable to true, and that will set up ngPackager with the default settings. And then you can, it'll add a task to your Angular JSON, which will publish your library to NPM with the NPM scope that you specified in when you set up the whole workspace. So yes, you can have libraries that are local to your monorepo and never leave it. You can also have libraries that are used within your monorepo and also published to the world or whatever NPM repository you want to use.
Cool. Isaac, I think we went way over. I mean, we would stay here for longer, but I think we went way over your time. And I want to thank you for staying with us and being part of our event. We're truly grateful for you taking the time.
Sure, thank you.
It's been great, and yeah, I think we totally enjoyed the presentation. I've been looking forward to a presentation on NX for a long time too. Introducing it to people. So again, great work you're doing with NX. Like, congrats to the whole team. It's a super awesome tool, and what you guys are doing. So yeah, maybe we'll have you as a guest, in the future as well.
Sure, sounds good. You'll have to send me some pizza or something in the mail so I can join with you.
And if you're ever in Bucharest or in this part of the world, yeah, just let us know.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks again, Isaac, and yeah, goodbye here from Bucharest.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.